It what you're saying reminds me of something that you posted that I really loved. You said that I don't want to butcher the specific quote. It is because it's a quote of yours, but something about like if you're having really connected sex, like that becomes a foundation for monogamy in a way. Like you don't like it becomes impossible to cheat if you're that sexually
Right.
connected. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah. So I coined the term conscious monogamy because, there's a lot of talk and a lot of positive energy around the idea of polyamory. And so I get asked about this all the time, especially in the last, I don't know, few years. And my response to that is that when a couple is really close and deeply connected, I would say that 99%, 99.9% of people aren't monogamous. They say they are, and they might think they are, but they're not really. Like, they're not really showing up and opening themselves emotionally. They're not really showing up and opening themselves up sexually. So when people make the argument, oh, monogamy doesn't work, you're actually saying that shitty relationships don't work, because most people have shitty relationships. If you really have a couple who's truly open and surrendered emotionally and sexually and, raw and vulnerable and connected, those people aren't feeling the need to go and have sex with other people, right? That they're so connected to each other and open to each other that that's deeply, deeply fulfilling. And so I had a couple come to one of my retreats years ago, and they were in their early 30s, really hot couple, right? Gorgeous guy, gorgeous woman. And they were fairly connected, but she'd never had a G-spot orgasm before. And that was her. And she wanted to squirt. She was just so keen to squirt. And they shared with me that they would bring other people into their bed, like quite frequently. And then after that week, and like she did learn how to ejaculate, like by the next day, she'd had her first ejaculating orgasm experience. They said to me at breakfast, they were like, I don't think we're going to do this anymore. Like, we feel so connected in a way that we just never have, that we just aren't feeling the need for those experiences any longer with us. And so, and I hear that from people all the time, even people who've been together for 20 and 30 years. If they're living in that space together of being truly deeply connected, they're not craving that, and when I've dug deeper with couples, because often there's this, humans were never meant to be this way, and have sex with the same person for the rest of your life. Well, if you're committed to stagnation, you are the same person for the rest of your life. But if you're committed to a life of evolution and growth, you're always a different person. You're always growing and changing and becoming better versions of who you are, both of you. And so, I've been around people, like I've had friends, they were deeply into those communities, and inevitably, like they'd be, oh, like we're so advanced and liberated because we're doing this. And I'm like, and then I talk to them, and the woman would have had a sexual not, I mean, I haven't spoken to every single couple, right? But people was close enough to be able to ask these questions to, had they been together for 30 years, she'd had sexual abuse stuff that she'd never cleared. They could only get to this like kind of one place, and then they would be stuck in their relationship, and he didn't want to leave her. And so they were like, well, let's open up the relationship, because he felt like he wasn't getting his needs met, and she wasn't showing up to really do the work to get there. And so that becomes almost like a really good substitute, because it like opens, and usually couples who are swingers, like they, open conversation is a real big part of that relationship. It has to be, to at least kind of work. And so it might be a level of honesty that they didn't even have before that, right? And even that becomes a bit more nourishing. But ultimately, I see that people get much further and higher and, more powerful relationships generated from conscious monogamy, not, this pseudo whatever monogamy that most people think is monogamy, but this actually deep surrendered place with each other.
What I couldn't agree more with you. I think that's amazing advice, and I really love that. What's some advice that you give to couples to help them achieve that conscious monogamy?
One of the most important things I would say is radical honesty. Like, we live in a very don't ask, don't tell, sins of omission are okay, don't rock the boat, avoid conflict kind of culture. And that transform, except on social media, when you have anonymous handles, then everyone's up for conflict suddenly. But in real life, people will avoid these things, right? And so it's like committing to both people, committing to, okay, we're going to have regular conversations. Like, I call them connecting dates, where you set time aside to have these deeper, pour your heart out, speak your deepest truth. And I call it like clearing the glass. Like, imagine there's a clear pane of glass between two people. And, initially you're really open and you're honest, and the glass is clean and clear. You can see each other, you can feel each other. And then over time, you start to hold things back, right? Oh, I don't want to say that. That might hurt their feelings. Or, oh, they don't really need to know that. Or outright lying to them. And you put all these splotches of mud on the glass, and eventually it builds a wall that you can't see each other on the other side of. And so it's about removing old stuff off of the glass, and then having a clean as you go policy where you're constantly sharing your deeper truths with each other, especially the important stuff, right? Like the effluvia of your life. Who gives a shit? I went to the store and I bought some pasta, and then this woman in line was really annoying. Like, who cares? Like, don't even bother sharing that, but share the real guts, intimate stuff that you need to say to your partner, and stuff you might be afraid to say to your partner. That's a huge piece of it. Prioritizing sex, making time for sex. And a lot of people will be, maybe they're not really estranged in their relationship, but they've just let things push their relationship to the bottom of their priority list, right? They've got jobs, they've got kids, whatever. And so they're, oh, we're just too tired to have sex. And say, well, sex is where you get energy from. Think of sex as your power source that you go to plug in with each other, you rejuvenate each other, and then you have all this energy and power to go and take on the world. I mean, think of the best sexual encounters you've ever had. How do you feel afterward?
Right. You feel like you're walking down the street like the main character of a movie. Like you're like,
Yeah,
everyone's opening doors for you. Like your
yeah,
favorite songs blasting in the background.
yeah. Yeah, it's a great description. It
Right.
becomes like, not only do you feel good, but other people pick up on it. You're radiating this magnetism and this charisma that people like are attracted to you, right? Like, there's something in your aura that they're just like, whoa, what is that, right? And they don't know what it is, but it's enticing. And so your life takes on this flow and this like ease and momentum, because you're wearing that energy all the time if you're having regular sex. So I encourage people to set aside time for a weekly 3-hour sex date. So not dinner, not a movie, not a walk in the park, but 3 hours of being naked, and whatever, maybe when people first hear me say this, like, how could we have sex for 3 hours? And then once they start doing it, they're like, oh my God, we had sex for like 5 hours. We were up till 5 in the morning. We didn't even feel tired the next day. So it's being naked, massaging, oral sex, manual sex, penetration, like all these different practices that I teach, even the breathing practice, right? Like practicing getting better at going longer because you're consciously using your breath. So that, and then, even and then just like psychologically not allowing yourself to make excuses. Like, there was a couple who came to one of my retreats, and they were on their second marriage. They'd been with people in sexless marriages for 10-15 years before that. They had children. They had the courage to leave and seek out a new reality. They find each other and they get married, and they committed. They were like, we are going to prioritize our sex life. They had 6 children between them, had both like really high powered, CEO, upper level management type jobs. And they had sex every single day without fail. Right? So whether that meant getting up at 5 in the morning, staying up late at night, booking a hotel in the middle of the day, like they were committed because they knew they'd been on the other side of like really wasteland kind of relationships, and they weren't going to do that again, right? Like whatever they could do to make sure that did not happen again. So when people have children are often one of the most socially validated excuses for not having sex. Oh, you haven't had sex in 2 years. Well, you've got kids. Like that's not natural. Like, no, it's not normal. It's been normalized, right? We think that's normal, but it's not, right? Like, especially when you have children, your sex life is where you plug in. Like, this is your sanctuary. This is your refueling station where you come together and get this energy and take on the challenges of the world. But we get that, right? And we buy into this notion that you've probably heard this idea that, your hormones play this kind of trick on you to get you together. Like the first 2 years of a relationship have all these like excitement, dopamine type hormone going. And then after 2 years, they just peter off because Mother Nature's gotten you together to have children and then her job is done, right? Have you heard that idea before? Like after 2 years, everything kind of
No, I
falls to the
haven't, but
wayside.
now I've heard
It
it.
gets well, it's not worth hearing or believing because it's not true. It's just that people stop prioritizing their relationship at a certain point, right? They
Yeah.
get together, they're committed, they're like, okay, put attention elsewhere. Where the true power is to place your relationship really high up on that totem pole. And then that's what fuels every other part of your life. And then you have that feeling of like, walking around on air and like this effortlessness that accompanies you because you've generated that from your bed, from your partner, from your sex life.